John, is the activity level heating up in newspapers not just because of Warren Buffett, but because of other potential transactions?
I don't know that it's hot. We clearly have seen.
Oh, I'm not saying hot, but it's starting from cold, right?
You know, the industry has gone through a wrenching change from its peak in 2006 and a series of very difficult years at the top line as advertising in the country, generally across all ad mediums, really contracted. It hit bottom probably in late 09, 010 and 11, a little bit of an uptick. And we're seeing a little bit of activity, but I think it's probably still fair to say that the vast majority of people who look at newspapers view them as businesses in transition, big, powerful franchises. Still very much a question mark about what the long-range outlook would look like, because they're huge infrastructures. Buffett buying, though, is often a signal that something's on the horizon.
Somebody sees value somewhere.
Exactly.
Transition to what? The next evolution in online?
Well, you know, and not all newspapers are alike. When you look at the very largest ones in the country, those markets have certain dynamics in terms of the transition to digital advertising that are different than a community newspaper in a town with 50,000 people. I'd have you look closely at what Buffett has bought, and it may tell you something that he thinks there are long legs in the average daily in a mid-sized market. But if you're trying to compete in a very large city in America, there are an awful lot of things that you're having to go up against. So I think it will be a combination of delivery. They get people's homes, digital products. You'll wake up in the morning, maybe you'll have a customized version on your desktop in your kitchen while you're drinking your coffee, and they'll price those products in a variety of ways to reach every consumer they can.
John, the newspaper industry's challenges aren't confined to North America or even the United States. The FT, the Financial Times, perhaps the premier financial newspaper on the planet, is for sale. Who do you think is going to end up buying it? Who are the candidates anyway? Who would want the FT? Is it going to be another billionaire who might look at it potentially as a vanity purchase, or is there some value to be harvested from a title like the FT?
Well, look, the FT sells papers all around the globe, and like you said, Eric, it's viewed as a fantastic curator and creator of unmatched content. So someone who's in the content business, I dare say the people who run the company you're sitting in have their names kicked around, but anybody who's in the business of being a purveyor of high-quality news has got to look at that franchise and say it's got to be interesting and at least worth a look.
Well, but let's go back to the vanity part of the equation. And I'm not talking about this company. I'm talking about the fact that there are people out there with a lot of money. They've made it in mining. They could be Russian oligarchs, etc., who could fancy themselves owning a paper of the FT's prestige and history and influence. Do you need to be in the market to smoke those bidders out just to see whether they're there?
I think that the industry of news has always attracted wealthy, strong personalities who want to have a voice.
But is that as sexy as, let's say, buying into a big movie studio? If you're super rich and you want to go vanity project in the media world, could newspapers seem a little old and stodgy given where you could invest?
I think if you own the voice in the FT, or you own the voice in Chicago or the voice of Los Angeles, it can be pretty sexy compared to a film. I do.
Is that because of the political influence that you can wield?
I think it speaks to lots of things. You know, papers have for 200 years in this country been the fourth rail, watching what the local mayor does, what the governor does, commenting on how state politics are working. It's an incredibly important piece of the way the country functions. And I just think that influence can't be understated. I don't know that in the end you'll see billionaires coming out of the woodworks to buy newspapers across America, but we'll certainly see a few that are in large markets that probably will go that way.
Let's go back to the value part of the equation. So from vanity back to value, the fact that Warren Buffett is interested in newspapers, does that suggest to you, and I know this is perhaps important to you because of your role as a banker, that we will see perhaps private equity firms come out of the woodwork and begin to take a look at newspapers as a really deep value play?
Yeah, I think with values, if you look at where we used to have a huge universe of publicly traded newspaper companies that were very, very well valued. We now have a smaller group of newspapers that are much more
conservatively valued.
Much more conservatively valued. And I think people still look at them and say, someone delivers something to your doorstep every morning at 5:30, 365 days a year, that captures both national and international local news. It is a remarkable thing. In a way, papers are underestimated for their production capacity, their delivery capacity. And if you look today, the average newspaper is making much less money on traditional advertising, much more money on circulation, on delivery of the Sunday supplements and the Sunday advertisements. So these businesses are transitioning into a pretty formidable, pretty formidable business, and they touch every business in town. Every retail business, every service business, every car dealer has a relationship with these franchises. So they have long legs.
Well, you touch all things tech and media. As you look to 2013, away from newspapers, what are you most focused on?
Well, in traditional media, we just had this bang-up advertising year built on the back of political. And that was true mostly in television, but it spills over in various places. I think that we will continue to see growth in the general ad economy consistent with if Washington can get its act together. Hard to imagine, but if it could, we'd actually maybe see some uplift and corporates being a little bit more courageous. In the digital world, you have this fight going on among 5, 6 companies, and it's a pretty remarkable fight and remarkable concentration of power. And I think those are sort of the things you've got to keep your eye on, the battles between the Googles and Apple, and what does Amazon do, what happens to Facebook with its games companies. Those 5 or 6 companies are going to really define what the landscape feels like.